Solitaire Rose Radio 91, Doug Marcaida from Forged in Fire and his new comic, Lineage. I have to admit, I had never seen the show Forged in Fire. And when Doug's agent contacted me and asked if I'd want to interview him about his comic, I said, sure. And I started to do my research and I found out a lot about him. He is a very interesting person. He's not from the world of comics, but he has a lot to say about comics. And like a lot of people who get introduced to comics, it's easy to tell that he was overwhelmed by the possibilities and the people involved. As you listen to this, you're going to hear about his past, but you're also going to hear about his introduction to the world of comics and how it sort of opened his mind up to the kind of stories that can be done in the medium, which I like outsider perspectives. I like how he sees comics as an ongoing thing that goes from generation to generation. I really enjoyed this interview. I had a lot of fun with it, and I hope you do too. I have your webpage up, got your about, and the thing that jumped out at me is your interest in martial arts started at the age of 8.
Correct.
Now, I got to be honest, when I was at the age of 8, my interests were Fisher Price Little People, Richie Rich comics, and whatever was for snack. So where did your interest in martial arts come from at such a young age?
Well, I was a very angry kid at a young age. Had issues with my family, my parents getting divorced. So at a young age, I was very angry. And when we say martial arts, it was basically because I just wanted to fight. It was my release at a young age. I was the neighborhood bully, and I was just a very troubled kid. So every so often, I wanted to learn some way to train just so that I could be a more effective bully, effective angry kid. Needless to say, I never got to finish a lot of martial arts at that young age growing up because the teachers didn't like me. I didn't have the right temperament to continue on the classes. It wasn't until my teen years that my father really enrolled me properly in classical martial arts. Because when you're a teenager back home in the Philippines, nobody fights with the fist anymore. Everybody carries a screwdriver, an ice pick, knives. And I was starting to get into the wrong kind of group. I got into gangs and stuff like that. So my martial arts didn't really answer to being accosted with blades. Hence, I got a whole phobia around knives. So yeah, that's kind of the story of how it started.
And then from there, you have developed your own style, it says here, called Filipino Martial Arts. And I will mispronounce this, so please correct me. Marcaida Kali?
Marcaida Kali. So later in years, when I migrated to the U.S., I joined the military, the U.S. Air Force, and we had a little group of getting back into the martial arts, which is kickboxing, and our version of a martial art club. But one of the guys there was very good at his empty hand way of training that I was so blown away. I'm like, okay, I want to learn what you're doing, man. And he goes, it's called Kali. Ooh, Kali. I like that word. It's from California. Because the guy's from California. He goes like, that's Filipino martial arts. I actually go, wait. Filipino martial arts. I'm Filipino. I was born and raised in the Filipino. He goes, yeah, it's called Arnis and Eskrima. Oh, yeah, those I know. But wait a minute, those train with weapons. So I got scared again. And he goes, yeah. As a matter of fact, I need a butterfly knife. You pull it out. And I'm, okay, no. I want to learn how to fight with my hands. I don't want to rely on weapons. He goes, are you kidding me? Don't you know that the weapons is what makes the hands faster? The weapons is what makes, if you can deal against a knife, you think punches and kicks matter? They're a joke. So you learn to do this. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't like knives. He goes, wait. And we were friends. I'm your friend. Look, we're all training here as buddies and everything else. I will guide you. I will take away that fear. Face your fears and it will free you. And then I started learning. We started off with sticks, which is basically just a metaphor for anything you pick up. And slowly but surely, I got over my fear. That's where I was able to realize, it's not the blade that made it bad. What made it bad was me putting myself in a situation, joining a gang, getting into these fraternity fights. That was bad, not the tool. And that's where I started my journey into falling in love with this particular martial art.
And did that help with the anger?
No, it made it worse. No,
Well,
no,
one of the
let's start
things
it this
about
way.
martial arts that you talk about discipline.
Yes,
So
yes,
where did the and you're talking about how at first you wanted to just fight, and then you had
yes,
this, you didn't want knives, and you're moving through all of that. Where
yeah.
did you start to
Because
learn to handle the anger to channel it towards something positive?
well, the problem was I joined a Cobra Kai mentality type of group. Not initially, right? My teacher was a first generation student of this group. So under him, I did learn the discipline. I did learn the science, and that did calm me down, but didn't stop me from wanting to get into fights. We would pride ourselves in how many fights we got into. Granted that we weren't allowed to use the weapons and all that because I was still in the military and held accountable for that. I did get into a couple of fights while I was in. It didn't serve me right, but that's my testosterone. And then when I got my guys, we had this elitist, tough guy, bullshit, macho mentality. Cobra Kai. How many knives do you have? I'm a knife fighter. You're gonna punch me? I'm sure. I got blades. You sure you want that? That kind of mentality because our own grandmaster was calling for us to fight everybody. Needless to say that it was a dark group. It was our classes were like 6 hours long, and it was very cultish behavior. Everybody, people on the outside would say, "Hey, did you drink the Kool-Aid?" I'm like, "What do you mean I drank the Kool-Aid?" Well, you all are acting, and we know your teacher is full of shit, and he wants to get into too many fights and all that. Empty drum make a lot of noise, and we don't even retell because they knew too that, you know, well, if is what you're doing good for your soul? Because if you're climbing for you guys to get into fights to prove themselves, then that goes to show that these guys have never been into a serious, full on assault with weapons because you will be in jail or you'll be 6 feet underground. So that kind of, was always above my head, but slowly but surely, I got into military training for this. I got into law enforcement training, but it took another instructor who pulled me aside and go, "What's the matter with you? You are a married man. All this bullshit, that's not who you are." And he pulled me into the light. And he showed you that martial arts should make you better in life, not bitter in life. All of a sudden, everything that I learned is like, yeah, you have a discipline. If you're disciplined enough to train for 6 hours and do this, and you're disciplined enough to show up for work all the time, to make sure that you can go through any kind of adversity. And he made the metaphors of life. He goes, "You think you want to get into a fight? Let's talk about the people that you praise because of their being a badass. Okay, let's see. Divorced how many times? Okay. Oh, can't hold the job. Okay. Oh, look at this. They're con man. How many times have they been sued? Yeah, these are your heroes. Yet you laugh at the other martial artist over there on the side who has this big belly, black belt, probably never been in a fight in his life. But wait, he's a leader in his community. He's actually a good father. He knows how to care for children and make sure that they have the values of respect, honor, integrity. Yet he's not your hero because he doesn't fit the mold of a badass. He's probably a better badass because he knows how to control the beast. And then I found out that the true beast that you try to control is not the people you fight out there. It's the one that's inside you that chooses to fight, that chooses to stand their ground. Then I looked at many of my fights in my life and realized 99% I could have walked away. I was never in a situation where I'm justified to say my life was in danger or I ran away and I had no way to stop what was going on. I have to fight back. None of that happened to me. So, yeah, it was a great and a blessing to be able to understand what true martial arts is about.
And is that where you started to create your own martial art by pulling that
Yeah.
into
Mm-hmm.
the all of the other parts of your life? Because if you look at where you've been, there's a lot that goes on. You've
Mm-hmm.
got the military stuff, you've got the childhood anger, you've got the all of that. You could have had two very different outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. I got
And
lucky there.
and
Um,
but it was a choice where you
it
said,
was a choice.
"No, I am going to change who I am.
Correct.
And
What
then
happened?
bring more people along in that.
Yeah. Well, first up, the Marcaida College is my last name, Doug Marcaida. I started using because once I left, I was able to leave those systems. I started studying from other instructors that truly increased my skills and gave me a better understanding of martial arts. I started to get popular in doing seminars. I started doing YouTube videos and I started doing seminars all over the world. That for them, because I was generic, I don't give a shit about names anymore. I'm sorry, I don't care about names
Oh,
anymore.
you can
So.
swear. We don't have the FCC down our throat.
All right. At the end of the day, it's like people, because I got sick and tired of the politics. That's why I left. I left this other group because it was all bravado. It was no longer who's training. You're all arguing about each other. You're arguing who's better. You're arguing who's got the proper rank or the way of doing it. So when I left that group, I was free to do whatever I wanted. Nobody could ever tell me, well, you're making it up. Yeah, because it's my own thing. It's not made up. I took it from different systems, but they go, yeah, but those systems, yeah, I don't have to answer to anybody anymore. So it was freeing. But what it also allowed me to do was people needed to use my name for commerce because they needed to say, hey, if we're doing a seminar, I just call Filipino Martial Arts or whatever, people won't come. But if I put Doug Marcaida teaching it, because I already had a following, they go, oh, okay, we'll go for that. So that's how Marcaida Kali came to be. But in my own system, when I teach my guys, the last test that you're going to get is basically you have to come up with your own system. You have to put your own name into it. You were not born in this world to carry my name. That's the way I look at it. And regardless of how much you say, oh, I studied from him, I learned that I'm pure and everything, you're not, because we will always put a piece of us. I mean, you cannot teach the same art if you're 6'7" and our teacher who taught it is 5'5". You will have to adapt, improvise, and overcome all the different things that we taught you because you're different. Our temperament, the way we look at things, our understanding of things. I studied from 6 different first generation instructors before I went to the grandmaster himself. Everybody was different doing the same thing. Why? One was business math. From him, I learned all about angles, the physics of motion. The other one was a court officer. For him, it was all about the law. The other one was a military guy. So everything was tactics and strategies. Another one was a Chinese medicine healer and a martial artist from the Chinese world. So he taught me from a Chinese martial artist point of view about balance, inner core, and all these things. So everybody puts something of themselves. But who does all the work? The student does, not the teacher. The teacher is nothing more than a guide. So to me, it's like this. You study from me, I guide you, I give you tips and everything else. But at the end of the day, call it your system, stand up and be recognized. You put in the work, not me.
So all of this brought you to where you are, and now you've got a comic out called Lineage. So I have to
Yeah.
ask, why comics? You've got your martial arts training you do. You've got the TV show that you're on, Forged in Fire. As I listen to your story, I don't hear a lot of comics. A lot of people I interview are people like me who they grew up reading comics and have this deep abiding love for the medium that I have a story that can only be told this way. But yours is a story that can be told in any medium. Why did you choose comics?
First up, before anything else, I had to make a choice. When you asked me how was I able to thrive up, I either had to change or lose my family. That's the bottom line. That's why I chose to go in the light side, right, about my martial arts. Having said that, I was born and raised in the Philippines, where I couldn't afford comic books. My friends had comic books. I'd sneak a look at their comic books. Never understood all the comic art. I just knew everything was nice to look at. Fast forward, I'm in the U.S. now. I'm doing Forge and Fire. I left my hospital job to do this. And I'm blessed to understand what Forge and Fire is because it is a cycle of knife. As an edge impact weapon specialist, I knew how to design blades according to its use because I teach the defense and offense of it. But being on the show as the end user, I get to test them all. But we also study other cultures, the blades from the world all throughout history, iconic weapons, and the lore. Having understood that, there was one thing I knew. When bladesmiths are hitting the metal, sometimes some bladesmiths would say, hey, I tell the metal to tell me what it wants to be. That kind of wording, right? I'm like, the other judges who are master smiths go, that's bullshit. It means he's got no skill. You're the one still hammering the thing into shape. That was funny. But I got it from a spiritual point of view. Why? Because the kind of martial art that I did is very much steeped in, you know, the dark arts. I mean, I'm learning how to use the weapons. My teachers and his peers and all over who are grandmasters from the same system, they are all into black magic of the knives. They have amulets. They have incantations sewed into their clothing. They wear these potions. I mean, this is modern day, and they're still doing this. And it's like among themselves. So I'm like, I'm a skeptic because I'm pretty much a Westerner. Give me a blade and I'll do my job.
Yeah.
I don't believe that it's going to stop anything. But I saw some weird stuff. I'm in the Southeast Asia, not only in the Philippines, it's in Malaysia and Indonesia. And these are learned men who believe these myths and lores, right? So I go, okay, from that, there's a story to tell. Every story I had from my different teachers, it evolved when I'm talking to my own student, doing seminars and everything else. It's basically fireside chats. Now, fast forward to Forge and Fire. While I was doing it, my producer, I had a conversation with my producer about these stories, about blades and everything else. And he goes, this should be a TV show. I go, absolutely should it be a TV show. We'll tie it to Forge and Fire. And COVID hit and my producer left the industry and everything else. So we're like, oh, crap. What am I going to do now? Let me put it in comic book form. That way, I can leave something behind. You see, it's a journey to where I am in the last quarter of my life. This is my last quarter. Now, my purpose is to leave everything that made me shine. I have certain blade designs. I have a martial art that made me shine. I do morning coffee talks. I try to do inspirational talks and all this. Now let me leave everything behind that makes me shine. Comic books is one of the ways that I can actually leave my thoughts and stories behind. But wait, there's more. The word lineage means more than a title for a comic series. I created this comic series not just to tell great stories, but to actually say that this is what I'm leaving behind for my great, great, great grandkids that I will never meet. That one day they pick it up and go, you see this guy right here? That awesome, awesome, legendary series called Lineage? That's my grandfather. But if I get everyone to do crowdfunding for a Kickstarter, they will forever have their names printed on these issues. Now, it's not just me leaving something behind. Everyone who backs this up has a chance to leave something behind. What are you going to do with the comic book you inherited, that you created? You're going to pass it down. But here's the thing. The story of Lineage is about the blade telling a story. It's not about the two brothers or the cult that they were in or the knife fighting and the martial arts in there. No, that is all told from a point of view of a blade that has a mark. So that's why it's something that can be passed down. Why? Because the blade that's telling the story is one of my designs. And later on in issues 2 to 4, you will see a tomahawk. You will see a tactical machete. You will see other blades that I have designed that are actual blades that are used for so many functions. They will make cameo appearances there. So what have I done? I put a soul into the comic book that you can pass down to your descendants. I gave you characters from the comic book that you can have and then pass them down as heirlooms to your descendants. So this is why the comic way of handing stuff down is important to me. It's a blessing to be able to have this opportunity to share with my followers, to share with people and say, hey, this is not my lineage. This is our lineage. Because this is only book 1, meaning it's about the Brotherhood of the Blade. That was from my history. Book 2, book 3, book 4 is basically the same soul. You see, in book 1, the blade dies. The blade's soul is transferred to another knife in another era to tell and continue its own new story that it finds. It's reincarnated. Who knows how many books that's going to be, but one day somebody's going to, who's part of this, will pick up where I left off. I'm not going to be alive forever. I'll be, who knows how many books I'll finish, but then they'll go, okay, now we have a community. We're all writing this stuff up. Now it's your turn to pick up the mantle once I'm gone. This is our lineage. If you're invested in the story, if you like the weapons, you do that. Even the names in here, some people have been putting names of their grandkids who are still 5 and 7 years old. I love that. Because maybe when they're in their teens and they get into comic book writing or whatever, they can pick up the mantle and continue the story. We'll be gone. Hence the word lineage.
And also, there is something about characters and pieces that have traveled on generation to generation to generation. One of the things they always said is everybody has their own Batman. The character started as kind of a pulp character in the late 30s and then became the friendly Batman, then became the goofy Batman, then became the mystery Batman, and so on and so on. Another thing about Lineage that really jumps out at me with your past is there in the 70s, there was this huge influx of Filipino artists into comics. And we had some beautiful, beautiful work. If you look at the Conan comics of the 60s, I'm sorry, of the 70s and 80s, Ernie Chan, whose real name was Ernie Chua, Filipino, who did the inking on John Buscema, and you had Alfredo Alcala, and you had Alex Nino, and all of these Filipino artists kind of rush in to the comics industry, but we got very few people who did the writing. So we got the art, but not the culture.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Just like I said, I don't know the comic book world. I was in San Diego Comic Con for the first time last year.
Oh, it is overwhelming, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, very much so. But now
150,000 people a day in one place.
Yeah, too many, and it expands to the gas lamp area.
Yes.
You know, so I did a panel over there to announce that I was doing a comic book. And there was this guy beside me who was some artist and for a comic book and everything else. Now, he saw the artwork of guys. Goes, you have a very good artist in there. I go, yeah, well, thank you. And I looked at his stuff, like, looks very good too. They're similar. It's just nice because I couldn't tell the difference. Great art is great art. Come to find out later on that this guy who I was talking to is a guy named Will Sportasio.
Yes. Yes.
A legend in his own right. I didn't know that, and he's telling me that. Had I only known, I found that out later on when I'm talking to a lot of people. They go, who's your artist? I'm like, oh, well, I talked to this guy, Wilson. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's one of the legends out there. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. But yeah, it is overwhelming. And it's just great to see the artwork that they do. I am blessed to have an artist who was an artist of the land of the Philippines, because this is Philippine culture. He brought in so much stuff that made my comic book evolve to what it is today. For example, in my story outline, I just had a big bad guy, a muscular monster that's coming out. He all of a sudden draws this and puts out a guy wearing a water buffalo horn, a mask rather, right? The both of the mask and horn. I'm like, that's demonic. He goes, well, I know that, this is a very famous animal in the Philippines of strength. It's gentle and everything else. But when you look at its shadows, it looks like a demon because of the horns. So he really put a lot of stuff into this comic art that made it meaningful to me. Later on, I found out that this guy left so many Easter eggs into this comic book that I had to call him up. I'm like, okay, now I got to meet you. We got online. And I go, now you're going to demonstrate to me every page. I want to get into your head. And he did. So here we are in the beginning, right? I call this still art. And then, now what are you? Oh, he's making all these sound effects, man. That was hilarious. But he understood. I didn't have to tell him. For example, this is about two brothers training when they were young. When the Blade finally realizes who it is, he was telling me, well, I was waking up and these boys are using me to train in this cult by their father. And the boys are fighting and training, and all of a sudden it becomes out of nowhere, this demon manifests itself. He kills the father, and the boy wakes up, the eldest boy, Miguel, and it's a nightmare. Now he's grown, and he's in the U.S. He migrated to the U.S. Similar story as mine, right? With his brother. Now, we understood that because the brothers have trained together and they have to call upon their training later on to defend themselves. But he goes, we'll go back to the first page. He goes, yeah. Now you see the boys training? Well, can't you see? Look closer. You see the older brother there, the little boy? Yeah. Look at his thumb. What? It's got a Band-Aid. Well, what about it? And then the other guy doesn't anyway. That's to show you that he's not very good at what he does. His younger brother is the skilled one. To have that insight and hide it in the drawings for later on as it's going to develop the storylines is very important. The little things that he puts in there was amazing. So not only did I know someone who puts stuff that really paints a picture, not just of what you want to see, but to give you little hints of where this is gonna go. Because I go, where did you get that intuition to do that? He goes, Doug, I know I watch you, and I get you in your talks, right? You use a lot of metaphors. You're very, you like to bring martial art into life and so on and so forth. He goes, that's the same thing with the comic book. The same passion and things you talk about in life and teaching your martial arts and everything else is no different in the comic book and the way you tell the story. So that's when I knew I got someone here really special.
Now, you don't come from a world where you put together a comic book story. And I see that you do have co-writers and stuff. So what was your journey toward from the idea to getting the people together, working with Kid Hero Productions, and kind of getting into that world rather than the TV world, which you know much more about?
Yeah.
They're
Mm-hmm.
they're not the same world,
Yep.
and how did you
It's
sort of
definitely very different.
navigate that?
Well, I'm one of the key designers of knives for Patriot Tactical. We're a tactical blade company that makes gun gear and knife gears and everything else. The owner of that and I are good friends, and we have this thing about storytelling. He has his world about getting back into the world of being a patriot. What does it mean to be a patriot in his story in the book he's writing? And I'm about telling my stories with a blade. Well, one time we had a conversation, and next thing you know, he sent me this poster from somebody from artists he took from Fiverr, right? It was a great poster. Like, we should make your story come true. Absolutely, I'm in. But then I'm like, who's this artist? It goes, oh, the guy's from India. Okay. Well, I look at the coloring and everything else in it, but it's missing a soul. One thing I've learned at being a public speaker and everything else, speak about, you know, what you know, and you will never go wrong. Speak from experience, and you will never go wrong. So I said, I want to speak about my first book should be about Brotherhood of the Blade, because I was always in some kind of brotherhood or gang. And I want to talk about my culture, my knife fighting, everything that has to do with the Philippines. So we then started looking for a company, and I found Kid Heroes, which is very Filipino centric from the comic books that they create. So he put me in contact with the writers, I'm sorry, the Earl Bailon and Justin Tizon. And when we read my outline, they go, "This is a great outline, a great story, but there are holes in here." I go, "Yeah, I know. When I was writing, I couldn't quite figure out how to make it blend in, because like sometimes, like, oh, look how." The one thing, right? It was, oh, conveniently, this person of pearl, because you need that. And no, convenient. I'm like, no, I agree. I hate bad stories. I don't care about action if the story doesn't make sense to me. I need a story first and foremost. So these guys came in and they gave me a way to truly, number one, make it evolve into something that makes sense and make it modern and make it exciting and to be able to tell one thing in a couple of pictures. So that's what got me hooked on these guys. And then, of course, we have our artist, we have our colorist, who's amazing, Raymond Lee. And looking at the colors of the comic book, colors are so important to bring out emotions. That's why I love seeing the colors here, especially when you're seeing the color changes based on what's going on in the story. Because I study also, and when I do a lot of neuro linguistic programming and all these things, with the strategies we use colors to bring out emotions.
Yes,
In
very much
psychology,
so.
colors mean a lot. So he did that, and I go, this guy understands. So lucky to do that also. So I'm very blessed to have this whole team that has the same vision. But here's the one thing that I made sure that they knew: this is not my comic book; it's our comic book. I don't go to a plumber and ask for dental advice. So I go to these guys and go, so you guys are the writers, you're the artist, you're the colorist, have free reign as long as it matches my outline. But make this yours too. And they did, and that's why it works.
And I'm looking at the Kickstarter right now. You've got examples of the covers, and the covers are beautiful, just beautifully drawn. And the color accentuates the art rather than like overwhelming it.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like the cover for issue 3. The I just love the composition of that cover. absolutely love the composition of it. And as I'm looking at the interior art pages that you have, one of the big things that, as a longtime comic book reader, every comic has fight scenes, but most of them are put together by people who don't know anything about martial arts, or they learned fights either from watching movies or watching or reading other comics. How were you able to sort of imprint upon the artist to get martial arts poses and the making it feel more real than a lot of comics, which is, they're just trading
Uh-huh.
punches until you get to the end? Here, you've got to have fight choreography if you're going to be legitimate in what you're doing.
Yeah, our artist is a man of the land. He's a adventurer. He goes out to a lot of treks. He talks to the people and the guides and everything else. That's why when he brought me a lot of the history of the tribes from the Philippines, I was blown away. But he's not a practitioner of what I do. So what I did was I took my brother who lives here, and we trained together. We're students under the same teachers, and I recorded myself with him doing what we do, training, doing my knife fighting, the finishing kills and everything else. We recorded ourselves, and I sent that to him. I go, this is what I want to see. I don't want to see a Superman punch or a Hulk smash or a Spider-Man pose. I want to see Filipino martial artists move the way we do. So he looked at the videos over and over and over, so that now when I saw the drawing, I get it. As a practitioner, I recognize the motions. There is a limitation to stop motion or drawings, but I can see the poses. I can see where the weight distribution is. I can see how the blades are in a specific position. It's not even just the blade, it's where's the other hand. Because this is what we do. And that's why, for a lot of Filipino martial artists out there and martial arts over there, this is taken from something that we do. Not just the fight scenes, but even the rituals, our bowing, our respect, the way we handle things, the way we hold and grip the stuff. A lot of times, the artists initially were sending me comics, initial drawings. I'm like, you're holding the blade the wrong way. Hold it this
Yeah.
way. Oh, that's the way it's facing. Your orientation of the edge is the wrong way. And so I had to correct them a couple of times. But that's why it's true to what I see. As a martial artist, we'll look at stuff and go, that's not right. Let's fix it.
I remember one of the first comic conventions I went to, I met a author, and this had to be like 82, 83. And he had a character who was a martial artist. It was a comic called The Badger. And one of the things that he did was much like you. He would, in the 80s, you could send somebody video, but he would have pictures of himself doing his martial arts, showing how the butterfly knife is used,
Mm-hmm.
because back then it was fairly new to American audiences. And it came through in the pages in that the fights actually looked like they mattered, that
Mm-hmm.
people were getting hurt. It was the consequence of the violence, not just the violence.
Yes.
And as someone who works with blades, you know inherently that a fight is going to hurt you even if you win.
Correct.
And it comes through in the art very well. Now, you've got two artists here, Earl Balon, who looks like he's been experienced in doing a number of comics, and Justin Quizon, who is a filmmaker. And when you sit down with them, how much of it is you bouncing ideas off of each other, and how much of it is them taking your story and putting in the pacing?
They took
You've
the story and
you've got 4 issues of story here. You can't do it in one, or
mm-hmm.
you can't take this one issue of story and stretch it out. You've got to have pacing and page breaks and issue breaks and things like that.
Oh, it was a great coming together of minds that say, how do we make this story better? They would come. They have my outline. Then we come back. Okay, this is what we got here. Let's discuss. And we go through the different, like basically having a sit down and going through the narration and the words and the actions. And we'll always talk about different things, because I have to tell them, okay, let me take a look at this and put it in my mind's eye. Okay, here's the thing. You're talking about this particular scene here, but knowing my character is that really feasible that they would do something like that? Is it plausible that they would do this? And then they'll come up with their reasoning and go, that's not a good enough reason. Because why? Because my character is able to do this. There's a lot of psychology about what we're talking about here. In the first issue, it's really about the story of the brothers facing their fears, growing up from a third world country, migrating to the U.S. because they were saved by their uncle, who pretty much didn't like the fact that they were being part of a cult that their father did. But now you're in the US, the older brother has this issue right now with nightmares. And the only thing the older brother gets from it is this blade that he inherited from his father. He knows how to use it, but now he uses the blade as a trinket. He uses the blade that was created for fighting and bloodletting and all this as something to spread cheese on his bread and everything else, right? If the blade could only see that. Now, the younger brother is like, how come I don't have that? I don't remember much of my past. So he's always pestering his brother, like, tell me about the blade. The brother won't share that. No, we're done. You know, you don't know what kind of memories it brings back. So the younger brother now does his own thing with TikTok. Those guys came up with TikTok. He goes, yeah, he has his own show called On the Verge because his name is Virgil. And he goes into these paranormal assignments trying to find the story of the blade or anything connected to this. Of course, he disguises it as a paranormal show, but he's really after the truth of the blade. Well, his older brother, tunes into one particular episode, and lo and behold, he's in they're following a lead about the blade. They go down to the subway and they seize the same mark that he remembers from the cult. Older brother freaks out, rushes over there, tells his brother, and the first time they meet, they're arguing again about why we should do this, why we shouldn't, and lo and behold, the demon manifests itself. Well, when the demon manifests itself, at first, the older brother's like shocked. He's like, it's a demon from my dreams. It's here. Younger brother's like, who invited you? Get the hell out of my house. And what's with the weird costume? He's a smart aleck, right? You think you look good in that? It's not even Halloween. And he starts throwing and they start fighting. But eventually, the demon makes a move toward the younger brother. Oh, big brother's here. And then he feels the blade move, pulls the blade out. Automatically, instinct turns over and he cuts the demon. Now, the demon can get cut, it can bleed, it can be killed. Then he looks at his younger brother and he goes, remember what our father used to teach us? And the younger bro goes, yeah, you mean this? And they start going through the motions together. And it starts to come alive. And before you know it, they remember how to move and what they were taught, and they kill the demon. At the end of that, they closely examine the demon and find out it's a man wearing a mask. That's all it is. And now they have more questions than answers. Because one of the stories here, we talk about the martial arts stories, right? It's that learn to confront your fears. The true battle lies not in the external forces, but in the fears we create within ourselves. This guy thought as a young kid there was such a demon. You created him as a demon. You were only 7 years old. Now you revisit it as an adult. You go, oh, yeah, I guess, I didn't really understand that. Now the younger brother is all of finding out that there is unity in adversity, right? These brothers learn that once they learn to trust each other again, they can finally connect when they became estranged. And there's always strength in shared memories, but sometimes those memories are never created the same for each one. So there's a lot of life stories here. The power of forgiveness, facing your fears. Now they have to go back to the source to continue on issues 2 to 4. But what I love about this is they have to face their lineage. They have to go back. Now, the blade is right here, just telling the story, right? He's like, my God, I was created to be the destructive killing machine and all that, and you're using me to spread cheese? Wait till I tell my creator what you've done with me. But that's the beauty of this. And when you start looking at all these different ways of doing that, the story really becomes alive because it's connected. But that's just the introduction. Issues 2 to 4, as you asked about my writers, right? It's becoming alive. Here's one of the things I've added. That mask was never supposed to be on our bad guy. He put it in there and it affected my cultish because it was supposed to be about cult behavior. Gee, why? Because was I part of a cult? Absolutely. Who trains 6 hours at night, drum music and fires and everything else? Yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid, right? So when I looked at that, I'm saying, Well, I was in San Diego Comic-Con, and I talked to some people who were doing cosplay. And I'll tell you this much, they are true believers in what they're wearing.
Oh,
They
yeah.
will wear a costume for 8 hours that they may discuss it for years. And they may be introverted without the mask, but when they put it on, there's something else. They become who they adore or who they want to be. And I go, there's something to be said about that, because that cult of cosplay is no different than any other cult. And the wearing of masks, the wearing of costumes and everything else does something to you. Look at us, right? I'm a regular guy, put on my military uniform. Boom, I am a military guy. You put on my gear, my knife, I'm packing and everything. So I have a different outlook of how I'm going to walk. I'm more powerful or invincible. Take all that, I become a dad at home. I don't mean to walk around with my knives around me. So it changes you. And I want to include all that in this comic series because that influences my story. So if I can do that as we're creating this, I can also allow my writers to make it alive. And that's where we are.
Now, there are two different ways you can jump in on this. The first is you can go to kidheroes.net. You will see comics, and if you just put your mouse on comics, the first one up there is Lineage. Click on that, and there are pins, there are chains, there is a metal edition of the comic, there's a acetate edition. These are all the special collector versions, and you could get for issue 1 right now. But if you head over to the Kickstarter, which is for Lineage, and there will be a link in the show notes, you can get a trade paperback of all 4 issues. You can, let's see, it starts with 1 digital issue. And it says you could get your digital version of any issue of your choice. You should probably start with number 1 if you're going to order it. Mm-hmm. And then 1 regular issue where you get a physical version of it. You can, add on enamel pins and stuff. Then here's where the stuff that I like shows up, where you could get a shout out, you could get your name in the comic, but you can also get digital editions of issues 2 through 4. You can get all 4 issues. You can get, regular editions of the comics, digital editions of the comics. So you can get all 4 issues, or even a trade paperback of all of these at the Kickstarter. And then you've got metal editions, and metal editions are something that I always find, as a longtime comic collector, they're one of those things that they look beautiful. And if you're going to get a metal edition, you're never going to put it in your comic box and forget about it, because why would you spend that much money on something that beautiful to put it away in a box? No, you're going to put that up on a shelf. You're going to put it where people can see it. And you've got the 4 issues, which tells the complete story, but you've said that you want to do more.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And with the blade itself being the character, there was I know that there was a movie that bounced around Hollywood for years and years and years that eventually got made about a gun, going from when it was first made in the Old West to now, and the different people who owned it. There was that movie $20, which was about a $20 bill that went from person to person to person. In your head, you've talked about how you want this idea to be passed on. How many ideas do you have for more of these stories before you say, all right, it's time to pass it on?
As long as I'm able to be creative, and always when somebody, that's why, so part of the thing about being this Kickstarter and all this and crowdfunding is that I'm creating a community. I want us to all get together and talk about what we love. This comic book is written in such a way that every time we actually go back to it, we're going to go page for page. I'm offering people I'm going to come back and do page for page, and we're going to look at all the hidden meanings within this comic book, all the Easter eggs we left behind. I'm even telling my writers, look, we got issues 2 to 4. Every one of you guys, you write something that's special about you and everything else. You send it to our artist. He's going to put it in there because I want it to be yours too. Now, here's one thing that I do. I'm a morning coffee talk. I have this inspirational talk that I do on Facebook. I talk about metaphors and life meanings and everything else. And it's really a place for people to come that need to work on issues and everything else. It's a positive thing. I did it 14 years ago when I started Fortune Fire to let my boys know that this is what dad does in the morning. Well, lo and behold, kids don't get on Facebook, so I started having a community. But I had a lot of people who were in hospice, chemotherapy, dialysis, and all that. And I had people who were broken with suicide ideations, and they'd write me and saying, you saved me from wanting to kill myself, or this really carried me. I'm like, how in the world did something I talk about my past make that happen? Well, I know that that's the Lord's doing. It's not me. It's that people will put what they want in there and make it meaningful to them. I accept that gift. All I need to see in the comments is I needed to hear this today. Or, oh my gosh, I felt like you were talking to me. That's important because you can create whatever you see out there. Whatever you want to see, you will put meaning to it. Well, this comic book, the way I'm going to be doing in our community, I'll say, everybody, let's look at page 2. Now, who had a couch like that? Because some people go, oh, I remember I had a couch like that in the 80s and all that. Okay, great. When you tell this story to your grandkid or whoever it is, you talk about what that comic book reminded you of. Now you're using my comic book or Lineage, our comic book, to elicit memories that you can pass on. Now, this blade that I'm giving you, that's part of it, or the other designs and everything else, you're going to hand that down, but you're going to learn how to use it because we're going to create a community where you're going to be learning because I'm teaching seminars on how to use this as an art form. But the blade that you inherited from a comic book that's telling a story now in your hands will be used somehow, some way, appreciated. Well, I don't know, whatever it is. But when you pass it down to the next generation, they'll have stories to tell too. You will have your own lineage for stories. Where'd you get that blade? Or it's part of this comic book. And it came with this. And I got this from my grandfather. And my grandfather, he used this blade to open up this thing. And before you know it, other things. So now all of a sudden, the stories that aren't written are being written on its own because we're making this a movement. You see, Cory, here's the idea I had with this, right? And it was wrong in the beginning, the way I said it, because at that time they didn't have it. I said, did George Lucas, when he created Star Wars, ever invite any of the followers to be part of this? Can put their names on the comic book or anything like that? Or in Game of Thrones when they're writing it? No. Well, of course, they didn't have crowdfunding then. But I do today. And I invite you to be part of this. This isn't about a comic book. This is about a story of lineage that we will pass on. This is about inviting everybody to create something that we can all be part of. This isn't about me. I'm going to die. This is about the writers. We'll be gone. This is about creating something that becomes alive on its own. That I have not seen happen. That's why I prefer comic book instead of a TV series right away. TV series, they make the video, it's done. It's out there. I have no control over that. A comic book, you use your imagination. We guide and we continue to write it together. Because why? This is only book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5. If I'm lucky, we'll make book 10, 10 different eras, 10 different blades and everything else. But when we're gone, who will pick up the mantle? Members of this, because they invested their time. They had the vision of where it's going to be. Don't think about today and only here. This is greater than us. Like I said, I wrote this for my great, great, great grandkids. I don't know what they're going to be into in those days, but we're creating it now. And that's why it's that special. That's why I'm telling people, one of the things I'm confident about martial arts that I teach. I do seminars. I've created knives. I'm a military combative instructor. I used to be before I got into Fortune Fire. So knowing what I teach, I'm very confident what we do when it comes to weapons. And I used to have seminars where I go, hey, if you can do what I'm doing after the seminar in the same way, in the same quality and everything else, and you like it and you don't like it, then the seminar is free. I do that. Now, blessed that nobody has ever said, they didn't like it. But I told Kids Heroes, let's do the same thing in the comic book. If you get in this, if you cannot see the vision of where we're going with this and why this is special and all that, and you don't like the story, then this comic book is free. Kid Heroes goes, hell no, that's a bad business model. But I mean, it is, they talk how many blades and everything. But I'm not a knife fighter. I'm not a blade and everything else. Not every blade is going to be a story about combat. How many blades out there are just sitting on a wall collecting dust? How many blades out there have been bought for the purpose of combat or tactical or whatever? How many kitchen knives are just inside the drawer, never been used? But they may have witnessed so many things. That's the storyline, not the tool.
That was one of the things that came to my mind, because the blade itself, and a lot of things are like this. The blade itself is a tool. It can be used for a number of things. And one of the stories could be a culinary master who's just as gifted, just as skilled as you are with martial arts with their food. Food Network used to have Iron Chef, which was this
Mm-hmm.
Japanese show, and
Yep.
they would show and talk about the knife skills in as much detail as you have talked about your blades. And it's how people see a tool rather than the tool itself. Like you said, if you make a knife, it can be used for spreading butter on bread. It can be used as a weapon. It can be used as a tool. It can be used for carving. All of these things. And every story is going to connect people. When you talked about how you wanted this to, the people who are in, who get their names in the book, you want them to be a part of this community. As you saw at San Diego, comics are almost as much community as story.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone who goes there, once you buy in, you talked about the cosplayers and the artists you met and everything. It is not like many other mediums, because when you go to meet, let's say, Mark Hamill, who was in Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to meet him, you're going to get a photo, you're going to shake his hand, you're going to pay him the money and get the autograph. When you talk to Wills Portacio, you got to learn who he was and what his story is. You met him as a person, because he's not somebody who's 30 feet tall on a big screen and everything like that. And comics sort of build that community, and it sounds to me like you really want that community to grow.
I want to connect with my community. Here's the difference once again, because I'm offering this. When we have this, so you get to meet me on my meet and greets. Let's say I'm not even a comic book, when I was just doing my knives or my seminars and everything else, or just a meet and greet from TV show. I go in there, I sign and everything. You're done. That's it. With this, no, we have a purpose together. Hey, I love that character. What do you think this character is going to be? Great. I love book one. What's book two? Well, let's put it out there, guys. What's your background? What's your story? And for example, say this. Oh my, I am a culinary chef, and this is my background, and this is everything. And they tell their story. I'm like, perfect. That's a great book to write about. Why? I never knew about that.
Yeah.
I'm not from your world. But now you're in our community. Now we can create this. I have this idea of writing. You ever play this game where we go, once upon a time, there was this boy, then I stopped. Now you
Yes, and the
continue.
next
And
person,
the
and the next
boy went
person. Yep.
on to, and you don't know where it's going to go. That's what I want because it's meaningful to us. It's fun. There is always where this is going to go, and we can polish it. And not only that, in this particular book already, we're saying 5 heads are better than one. Imagine a whole community better than one, than my own. What kind of stories are we going to come up with? Definitely great stories. I believe in that because I'm a good storyteller. At least I'm not saying that good. I know my story is good. This is something that's been told and retold for 15 years in fireside chats. And we've evolved it because a lot of us loved it. When I was in Athens Con for the first time, people came up and saw my comic book, great art and everything else. Go, no, there's a story to this. And I told them that. And their eyes just go, wow, I never thought of that told that way. That's very unique. But it was also so inspirational because they come up because like, you're in Athens. Have you been to Acropolis? Have you been to, I'm like, this is the seat of mythology, the sword of Perseus, Medusa's head and all this. And go, we have stories like that, but that's myth. How about the simple story of a blade that witnessed a love triangle? The human emotions, where the blade is nothing more than a witness. This is where it can go. And that's why I wanted us to be part of something that's dynamic. It's not like I have this comic book, let me put in my collection. No, we got to grow with it.
And there you go. Doug's Kickstarter. ends on Monday. But as you can see over at Big Kid Productions, you can still pick up issue one. You could buy it once it's completed. There's a lot going on there. Um, Stuff about the show, because this is where I seem to do it. As you've noticed, Crazy Comics and Stories, Joe's schedule and my schedule is having a little bit of trouble. We're putting out new episodes usually on Fridays now. And that's because of my work schedule changing and some other changes going on. Joe's schedule seems to change every few months. So there's that. But we are continuing to do episodes, and we're coming up on episode 700. Joe hasn't told me what it's going to be. He's actually planning the show for once. So I want to thank you for listening. Please subscribe via your podcast aggregator, and I will be back soon with more stories.